Ken Powell, unfortunately, is not with us today, but finally...
Well, he's still with us. He's still with us. He's just not with us today.
He's still with us, but he's not here on the podcast. We have James Patterson, who from is just generally better than the rest of us at all of this stuff. So we have James Patterson with us today. So thank you, James, for joining us.
Oh, awesome. It's a good episode to be in on as well. Looking back at 2021, huh?
Yeah, that's right. Now is Pat Clifton going to get jealous? Like have you told him? Did you clear this with Pat?
Well, I think, Aaron did the right thing today, is just leaving too short of a runway for me to be able to accurately communicate with him. So it's always best to ask for forgiveness. And in this case, I'll just ask him for forgiveness.
Now, to be fair, you guys have one of the best video podcasts on the Rugby Network, but I can't remember what it's called. What is it called?
Inside the Ruck.
Inside the Ruck. That's right. Thank you. Inside the Ruck. So definitely something you should check out. Well, thanks for joining us. I had a really interesting day or evening, James, and I'll share with you. I had my first day of coaching rugby in 4 years. So I retired from the US women's national team in 2017 and have basically stayed away. And today I went and coached my daughter Penelope's under-8s team. It was generally a disaster, partly because I don't think Penelope understood what we meant when, is it okay if daddy goes and coaches the team? Because I think she assumed that I would be coaching her. But when she called for the ball and I passed it to another girl who also called for the ball, it ended up in this huge meltdown and with her leaving the field crying. And my wife wasn't there and I couldn't console her because I was coaching. I don't think it's going to happen again for a little while. So I enjoyed it.
Are you like Roy? Have you seen Ted Lasso?
I have seen Ted Lasso.
Are you like Roy as a coach? Are you like Roy as a coach?
I am just like Roy.
Interestingly enough, what is it? What are the statistics of the last 12 meetings? They've won 11 of them in the US. So it's been on kind of a roll ever since I left. Yeah. That was the departure point. When I stopped playing for the US, we stopped losing to Canada. So
we can mark the inflection.
Yeah, that is the point. That is the point where things changed. And, it is a hostile environment playing in Canada and some of these places. It's in the past, playing at places like Kingston, and obviously when they had the game in this last weekend, the conditions weren't great. There was a win there, but I think just Canada made fewer mistakes, and it came down to the end of the day. I think it wasn't pretty by any means, but they did enough to come away with a win.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of reasons why Canada has traditionally played the World Cup qualifier in Newfoundland. St. John's, one of them is it's impossible to get to from the US. Like it always takes two legs. Like you just can't get there in one. Like it's just terrible. Hostile crowd, long trip, difficult conditions, and those are always great equalizers, right? So the wind, if you're the better team, you want perfect conditions. And if you don't think that you're the better team, then you want worse conditions. But I actually think Canada were the better team on this day. I mean, We saw Gary Gold come out and be really disappointed. I mean, the US were absolutely dominant in the set piece. Like their scrum was killing Canada, and their line out looked excellent. And they just didn't take the opportunities they had in the first half. And then the second half with subs, it all fell apart. Like they literally couldn't win a line out. I mean, it was not good. And then, the other thing I would say is that I think that Canada tried to play a bit more rugby. The US, I think, have played, a relatively conservative game. They're using the box kick. The loss of Cam Dolan was huge, right? And even Mika Kruse and having to put Nate Osberger on the wing and not having him to be able to provide a little bit of spark off the bench. I think that was big. But so James, what are your thoughts about the Sabercats and how they played this year? They had some good games. Like they played. I mean, I think they played the Giltinis pretty close, right?
Yeah.
For a while.
Yeah.
But never seemed to be able to put it all together for a full 80 minutes.
It was interesting. I think I've had a few conversations with some people that were involved in this, and it's interesting because statistically, you look at them and you look at the Seawolves, and we'll talk about them a little bit later. If you go through some of their games and look where they were a lot closer. The statistics were a lot closer than the scoreline. So, in teams, there's sometimes just those little things that click. Like, it didn't really help at the beginning of the season with some of the injuries they had coming into it. But they had some real bright spots this season. You look at like the impact of Bellicano on the wing. You look at the emergence of some of the players, the way they're able to bring players up through the HDX Academy. Like, it was all there, it just never really gelled. And this is going to be one thing that we can talk about, and it's a question to you, is that when you bring in, and Healy's a great guy and a good coach, but where's the difference between like a game plan coach and a really technical skills coach when it comes to your...
Let's talk about a really, really interesting team, the Arrows. I mean, longest road trip on history, right? Was it like 3 World Cups in a row? I mean, you've done a World Cup. That feels like forever, right? Imagine doing that 3 times.
They were away from home for a very, very long time. And I just think it's unprecedented. Honestly, I don't think you can really take... If you're looking at the Arrows next season, I think they're going to have some challenges, because if you look at one thing, it wasn't a perfect experience down there. So the mood wouldn't have been great towards the end of it. And I'm sure they're going to have some players that are probably looking at this last year's campaign. It's probably not the best experience in their rugby career. And they might have some recruiting challenges in terms of retaining some of their players that I'm sure will be, because there's a lot of good players. And that Arrows side that'll be up there on the top of the list for a lot of MLR sides in the States. So they're going to have some challenges retaining some of their players. It'll be interesting to see, how they change the makeup of either their coaching staff, or secondly, the dynamics of players. They've relied on South America quite heavily, and some of those players are kind of getting older. You saw De La Vega, he was one of the best loose forwards in the competitions, just gone over to France. I think he's a huge loss for them, but they also have players coming back in, guys like Jamie McKenzie coming back from injury. He's a good leader. Will he be, player coach? What influence will he have on them next year? It was remarkable what they're able to do this season. They put together some pretty good performances, but it was just, the chips are stacked right against you, and if you're in that situation, you just can't escape rugby. There's no escaping it.
All right, let's get to the Utah Warriors, a team that finally was consistent, and their consistency was pulling games out of the bag right at the end. That's what they did better than anyone else. It was crazy.
Houdinis. For me, they're the model program in terms of what they've been able to do on and off the field. They've got a great US-based coaching staff. I have so much respect for, the entire coaching staff they have there, what they've done off the field, the crowds. I went up there so many times. Great stadium, one of the best stadiums to play in Major League Rugby, great fans. And they did a really good job, of being able to have the Mike Teo effect, the Mika Cruze effect, where they would just rob games from the end. And that's just that never quit attitude they had. And there was one conversation I had early in the season. I was talking to Pitts about, their defense. And in the past, they'd been quite physical on defense. The Warriors were always known as the guys that get up and smack you and make dominant tackles. And I had a conversation with him about what he was doing before the season. He says, no. So that's not a KPI at all for us this year. 0. Dominant tackles wasn't a KPI for them. Successful tackles behind the back line. And it was those little tweaks that a guy like that brings to it really took a team that has always had so much potential on the field, and they were able to deliver it.